Welcome. What I'm going to be doing today is just outlining 10 mark answers for the AQA Sociology exams, particularly the 10 markers that will appear on paper 1, 2 and 3. So as I mentioned, 10 markers appear across all papers on this. As you can see here, these will be the 10 markers you appear. Now in yellow I've identified the outline and explain 10 marker, and in green I've highlighted the analysis 10 markers. Now as I mentioned, there are two types of 10 markers. The analysis questions are the second type. So the first type is a mini essay, which is the outline and explain. These are always requiring you to outline 2 reasons, 2 ways, 2 factors, 2 ideas, 2 criticisms, but generally it's using your knowledge. Be aware with the family paper, there does seem to be a tendency with some of these 10 markers to apply 2 different topics. So you have to link one topic to another or explain how one factor influences another. So there is an element of knowledge, but there is also this concept about making connections. The second type of 10 marker is a mini essay question. And again, this is one that comes with an item. You spend no more than 15 minutes on it. The question always starts with apply material from item A or item B or item C, analyze 2, and you'll be required to take 2 hooks or 2 ideas from the paragraph that you're given, and they will be used within your answer. The second type of 10 marker, there's a greater emphasis on application, interpretation, and there is some analysis and evaluation. The first 10 marker doesn't have any evaluation elements to it. So what do you need to do to answer them? So you're writing about a page and a quarter, page and a quarter. Leave a line between each paragraph. Make it clear where point 1 is and point 2 is. You spend 15 minutes on this question altogether. You want to include names and concepts in every paragraph. Make it conceptual, make it sociological. Avoid picking 2 ways or reasons or factors that are very similar or from the same issue. So particularly in the item questions, don't pick or try not to make 2 points from the same bit of the item, unless you can make 2 very different arguments, but try to avoid this possibility of repeating yourself. No introductions needed, there's no conclusion. And I just want to highlight here what the exam report, how the exam board commented on the 10 mark questions. And again, I'll highlight some of the key bits. So introductory paragraphs and conclusions are not necessary, and they don't gain any extra marks. They also take up extra time. The word 2 is in bold for a reason. You need to give 2 reasons, 2 points. Examiners found that some students would either give 1 point or would give 3 or 4 points. And again, the exam board want 2 clear points. Try and be helpful. Give a clear indication where your answers start and finish. One way is this, another way is this. And again, some students wrote far more than was needed for a 10 mark response. But again, so just try and make sure you're being clear with your arguments. In particular, it talks about the idea of outline and explain. Analysis questions are both marked differently. So in the outline and explain, there is a greater emphasis on knowledge and application and analysis. In the analysis questions, there's greater emphasis on the analysis and evaluation. So we're going to talk about how they're marked in a minute. So with the outline explain, we want to bring 2 bits of the topic together. For the analysis questions, you're being asked to critically, clearly outline what is being used from the item. So do try and make sure you get that clear item indication there. And the best 10 markers at the very bottom were focused, they had a clear start point, they developed it, and they used concepts, studies and evidence to support their point. Now, we mentioned AO1, AO2 and AO3, and if you've seen my how to write 20 markers video, you'll be familiar with this table. So I just want to flag up what these key skills are in case you're unfamiliar with them. So the AO1 is your knowledge and understanding. That's using your sociology language and information from lessons. But now with this, you don't want to just regurgitate what you know and everything you know about a topic. Try and pick and be selective about what information you use. Go into your discussions of that information by using your knowledge, bringing in the studies, the concepts, the names, the policies, the criticisms. So use your knowledge effectively. Don't just try and regurgitate it all to teach the examiner what you know. Be precise and accurate. Show the examiner, that you've selected things specifically because they're relevant to the question, which kind of overlaps with the second AO2 of application. So application is showing why you've put something there. There's no point talking about a issue or a topic or a point for 5-10 minutes and then leaving it. You need to show why it's relevant. Why have you discussed it? So it's a way of building, extending your AO1, and the best way to do this is, sentences like this shows that, this suggests that, this challenges. So it's idea of just being specific. Why have you talked about that knowledge? What's the relevance of it? And AO3 is your evaluation or your analysis. Now again, the command words there have different meanings. So for analysis, that's about plotting the journey, it's extending the discussion, it's breaking it down. So who, how, why, what, when has this issue got to do with the topic? So it's being very clear, plotting the journey. So you're going from point A to B to C, and you're kind of describing how you've got from each place and how you go to the next. Evaluation is, as it's always been, it's about the strengths and weaknesses. It's the agrees, the disagrees, the contradictions, the criticisms. And we're going to talk about avoiding bolt-on evaluations a little bit later, but essentially it's providing some kind of discussion or criticism or reflection on what you've discussed. Other key things to highlight: synoptic thinking. So as I said, family 10 marker, they tend to draw connections between two different topic areas. So how gender changes affect childhood, or how social policies affected family structure. So again, it's about trying to make connections between two topics. Draw on the key themes: socialization, culture, identity, always key themes. To include globalization is a really good one for trying to keep it contemporary. And the relevance and usefulness, these are always good things to highlight. Is an argument relevant? Is it useful? Particularly if you're looking at modern theories and the topic has the word today, because that's a key thing. If it's today, is it relevant now? And some of those theories might provide an insight, but they may not be relevant. So as I mentioned earlier, the idea of bolting on evaluations, avoiding a bolt-on. So you've got some examples here on the screen. A bolt-on is just, putting a piece of information in without any context, without any connection to what you're discussing. So it could be you're discussing a view like functionalist views, and then you just put Marxist thinkers would argue that the family supports capitalism, and it has no relevance. It's just this bit of information you've just thrown at your answer, hoping it will stick. To make it an evaluation, you need to highlight the connection. So Marxist thinkers would challenge the functionalist view as they interpret their view of the family as supporting capitalism as opposed to society, or the society that's being benefited by the family is a capitalist society. So it's the idea of making it relevant to what you're discussing. You're not just throwing on and tacking on a bit of information like pin the tail on the donkey. You're just putting it there. You're making it relevant. You're explaining how it is connected to what you're doing. How is your evaluation connected to the donkey, almost, in this way? Now, some do's and don'ts for 10 markers. Very, very quickly, I'm going to fly through these and flag up a couple of key ones. So stick to your reasons, stick to your factors, stick to your ideas throughout the paragraph. Building the analysis, go into a bit of detail on all the points, give examples, explain what the significance of it is, how it applies to the question. And that's that kind of last one. Make sure everything you've said is relevant to the question. You are referring back to it. And I'm going to give you some ideas of how to refer and make sure you're connected to the question later. Don't rush into the first paragraph. I know it's 15 minutes. It's quite a short period of time. It can feel a bit of panic, but give yourself a minute or two to read the question, read the item, and just think, where are you going to go? Because the second that pen hits the paper, you're going to be writing. So it's good to have an idea of what you're going to say and what you're going to think about before you start, particularly if you're going to write 2 paragraphs. You don't want to write 1 paragraph, then start a second, and end up drifting back into repeating what you've already said. Don't just describe the studies. You can talk about theory, you can talk about a person or a theorist, but why are you discussing them? It's all well and good, describing in masses of detail Parsons' theory of the family, but what's it got to do with the question? Avoid using general evaluation. Again, don't just bolt on or tack on a random sentence or bit of knowledge hoping that it will stick. Make it relevant to what you've just discussed. And again, the common mistake is obviously only addressing one part of a two-part question, particularly if it's how does this affect this area. Make sure you are addressing all parts of the question. Now, for structure, easy structure to use could be the pill model. So make your point. One way is, another way is. Provide a study, the evidence, the concept, the example. This study demonstrates that this concept supports the view that use the words from the question. Explain is the analysis. Go into more detail. So therefore, furthermore, additionally, although, and then link back to the question, because we're not evaluating, we're linking it back to the question here. So this shows that, this suggests that, therefore this reason does this, and repeat the question word again. Use the word in the question to tie your answer to the question. Show the examiner you are focusing on it. So what makes some good analysis on 10-mark questions? So I've got an example here, and again this is a really good question because there's no bolt-on evaluation. There's good explanation of key points, so they've extended their discussion, and it does stick to the question. And the question being listed up here is outline and explain two ways. Oh, let's highlight in a different color that can be seen. That doesn't get seen either. There we go, that can be seen. Two ways in which women's paid work has affected family structures. So this is what the question is asking. Now, as you can see, what I've highlighted are some of those key points. So the opening sentence is linking to the question. It's repeating the wording of the question, particularly affected family structures, or well, it's almost, you can see, women's involvement in paid work has affected family structures, because they then go into their discussion. Wilmot and Young, they talk about what their theory is, and they've again talked about the idea of analysis. They've highlighted why it was significant. So this marked the switch from segregated conjugal roles and structures shared between two adults. So they've highlighted the significance. They've not just described what Wilmot and Young did. They then extend it. So this means that women and men are both paid the same. So they've explained the significance. And then they go into questioning. Now, this isn't evaluation in the sense of a bolt-on criticism. It's an extension of what they're saying. So the extent of this is true. So it is a kind of criticism. It's a kind of an evaluation. But it's not just saying, however, and it's an extension of the discussion. Compared to example B, which again is the same question, there is good evaluation, there is good analysis, but these aren't going to be helpful in a 10-mark identify and explain. You don't get marks for evaluation. So as you can see here, starting off again strong, one way that women's paid work has affected family structures is, they talk about Wilmot and Young, and they go, this means that men and women are paid the same. They also then this separate bit, although Guernsey found that women, this kind of goes into a off the topic discussion. This material wouldn't really be credible, because it, obviously, particularly here, we see the start of quite a specific evaluation, and up here we kind of almost go on a different tangent, and the significance isn't really demonstrated. So mark scheme, really quickly, just the mark scheme itself. You can see here I've highlighted the keywords: very good knowledge and understanding, 2 applications of relevant material, and appropriate analysis. They're the key things they're looking for. As you go down the list, you can see, reasonable knowledge, 1 or 2 applications, basic analysis, all the way down to limited. For the analysed 10 markers, same kind of structure. Some do's and don'ts, some key things to flag up. So again, always be clear your 2 reasons that you talk about, 2 separate and distinct points, particularly 2 separate and distinct points from the item if you can. Don't choose 2 random points from your own knowledge. They've got to come from the item. Don't drift into topics that aren't related to the question, aren't relevant, because again, it's that application. If you start drifting away from the question, you're not answering it. And the general evaluation, the general criticism, the bolt on, the tag on. We don't want that. You need to try and make sure that what you're criticizing, you highlight what's it got to do with what you just said. Now, a template for 10 markers, which could be an analysed 10 markers, could be the ideal approach. So slightly different to PIL, it's ideal. So you identify your reason, and again, it's coming from the item. So this could be, what is the argument, the reason that you're using? and pull it from the item. What has that got to do? So it talks about, what's the theory, the reason, the argument, the way. What does it mean? So go on to expand and explain it. Use names, studies, statistics as your example to support what you're saying. Analysis is then, how does this answer the question? How does this support what the argument you're making? What's the relevance of it? This is a really good opportunity to use some contemporary issues. And lastly, the link. Bringing in, how does it fit with the question? Again, the Mart scheme itself here, you can see understanding knowledge is key. And again, it's the use of the material that is the focus, the item, the material. That's what they want you to be using. So do make sure you're putting it in there. And lastly, just some opening lines. So as I said, using the wording from the question is a key way to show you're answering the question, and using these words throughout your answer. So you can see here just some examples. One way that functionalism is useful for understanding society today is, one problem with Marxism today is, one problem with conflict theories today. It's the idea if you're using the word in the question as your starting point, and then you build on it, and it shows that you are trying to answer the question. You can go further, as you can see at the bottom here, with some tricky questions. So this example of outline explain two problems with a consensus theory. You need to say what consensus theories claim and then how it is a problem. And you can see with the two examples, example B is the better one. So consensus theories ignore conflict in the family is a criticism, but you've not gone to say why. It's lacking the depth, it's lacking that analysis. You've identified a reason, but you've not done any analysis. Second one here, conflict theories claim that institutions benefit the individual and society. For example, the family. However, feminists, and then you've gone into the criticism. So that way it's clear what the view is and how you're going to or what you're criticizing. You've not gone into too much detail to explain it. Okay, so hopefully this has been of some help. It's just a way of just identifying, understanding and expanding on what 10 markers are and how they are different from one another. Thanks for watching. Hope this helps. And as I mentioned, there is a 20 mark question breakdown very similar to this one, which I'll leave on the screen for you to take a look at. Thanks for watching.